Brian Samson, what's your superpower and how's that serve your mission to help others?
What's my superpower? I've been in the recruiting space forever, so I love connecting people. I have a great time connecting the right people with the right companies.
Well, I resonate very closely to that, coming from 20 years in talent acquisition myself, so I can certainly relate. Um, if you don't mind walking through your kind of journey on how you got here and what that looks like from your story and then what you have going on right now with current opportunities.
Yeah, I'll start with the end just so people kind of know where I'm going. So I like to look at the Robert Kiyosaki sequel to Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is Cash Flow Quadrant. And you look at the quadrants: employee, self-employed, business owner, investor. So I've navigated all four quadrants. Today I'm probably a little bit more of an investor with some business owner responsibilities. And I live in Oahu, Hawaii. But how did I get here? Midwest kid, made money shoveling snow, raking leaves, all that stuff. Uh, Ended up in talent acquisition just like you. So downtown Chicago, uh, working in recruiting, um, and love the competitive aspect of it. I liked knowing that there was a race to get the best candidate. You made more money if you made more placements. I was the weird guy. Growing up, I was big into like the stats for my little league baseball. Like, I was the 8-year old that could calculate my earn run average, in my head. And when we got to the staffing world of the whiteboards everywhere and the bullpens, man, I knew not only my stats, but everybody else's stats and the whole team, like their ratios. And I mean, I was just obsessed with like the number tracking, the competition, the energy. I loved it. Fast forward, ended up in California, um, and I went to the other side of the house. Went in house, lived in San Francisco. All the tech startup stuff that we hear about, if you watch the HBO Silicon Valley, and all those tech logos, Oracle, Google, Meta, now it's OpenAI and Anthropic. I was right in the middle of it during like the golden age of SaaS, so software as a service, and I was the head of recruiting, head of talent. So when a company would raise, say, 10, $20 million, all right, Brian, got to go. Like, let's hire some engineers or salespeople. That was really my role. Um, Never really had that entrepreneurial bug until about 5 years in San Francisco. I kind of built up enough confidence to give it a shot. I did it a little bit unusual in two ways. I raised money, so I raised $2 million from an investor for my idea, and then I also decided to put the majority of the team in Argentina, which meant that you see kids' artwork in the back. So I obviously have a family now, but back then it was just me and my wife, and we wanted a little bit of adventure. So we relocated to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and experienced the massive amounts of steak, wine, tree-lined streets and cafes, and the wild west of inflation and labor strikes and crazy volatility. But I was hooked on Latin America. I'm not involved with that first company anymore. Had a 4-year run, grew it to 80 engineers. But I've since had two other businesses that are very Latin America focused. You know this world, Graham, so I can say the acronym RPO. But for your listeners that might not know, recruitment process outsourcing, we were leasing recruiters, mostly from Latin America, to U.S. companies that were hiring U.S. candidates for U.S. companies. The recruiters just happened to be project based, fully English speaking in Latin America. And then the one that I've got today, it's called Plug Technologies. It is pure staff augmentation. So that means kind of like long term embedded team staffing for mostly tech companies, but not all. We do about 100 placements every year. So we've got some size and scale. Companies look to us to be the broker. Like if they did DIY, which you can with Upwork or Fiverr, they could probably find some decent people. But the decent people aren't, they don't want decent people. They want great people, and the great people aren't on these platforms. They're working just like people in the US are working heads down. So we recruit them and kind of package it all up for long-term projects. And as I mentioned at the outset of the show, as I've kind of moved into the investor quadrant, I have a cleaning business on Oahu. I don't clean houses, but I provide capital and strategy. Locksmith company, same setup. And then an AI business where we're implementing AI for small business owners, founders, people that are maybe a little bit stressed out by hearing about AI all day but don't know where to start. Can someone just like do this for me and figure out Claude Code and N8N and all this architecture and build stuff? And like I said, I've got 2 kids, live in Oahu, and really happy to be here.
Appreciate you sharing, Brian. So let's step back to Plug, and if you could share a little bit more on like what types of clients. You mentioned tech and some others, but like, or maybe not what types of clients, but what types of skill sets are really the bread and butter for Plug. I think that really helps kind of frame up who could be a potential client or be helped by your services.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The types of roles is really almost anything you'd find white collar in the States.
Mm-hmm.
IT tends to be the first mover, whether it's offshoring to India or nearshoring to Latin America or Poland or wherever, because IT is mature, all the infrastructure is kind of ready. So even going back to the .com world, India was starting to, have the integrators like Cognizant and Tata and Infosys. I'm sure a lot of those names are familiar. Latin America has really come on the scene in that integrator world about 20 years ago, but in terms of like brand new product development software, it's surprising some people. There's a lot of VC money down there. They built some of their own unicorns. There's a lot of like really exciting new products that they're building, new software products. So that's the core of what we do and the core of what tends to be nearshored. But we also have the capability for marketing, VAs. We've got a call center for a client in Nicaragua, finance, accounting. So really anything that could be worked remotely during COVID could be done from Latin America.
Very good. And then the AI implementation company, what's the name of that company? And can you kind of walk us through like how you engage with founders and SMBs and just a little bit more on that company?
Yeah, I'd love to. That one's called Bandsaw, just like what you might have in your wood shop, bandsaw.ai. And Bandsaw for me was, I needed this 18 months ago for all the different companies that I'm running. I felt like I was stretched a little bit. To me, AI was something that I didn't want to be left behind. And I think a lot of founders can relate to that. But I also was just bouncing between like finance and marketing and invoices and sales calls and delivery. And I thought like AI, you're not coding, but you need a little bit of deep work time. Like you need 4 hours at a time to like immerse and really learn it and know what's going on. And Claude Code, I think, has made things a little bit easier. But going back 18 months ago, N8N and Make.com and Lovable, these things, like you just need a little bit of immersive time. And I hired a guy who was like my proxy, like building stuff for me. We're learning as we go. We're testing. And I thought, I think there's people out there like me that are just a little bit paralyzed. They maybe are a little bit anxious. They don't want to be left behind. They want to try stuff. So we've kind of tested it in a lot of my companies. For our locksmith company, we built a custom AI receptionist. So if our locksmiths are on jobs, somebody's able to kind of answer, and it's not we're not trying to trick anybody. It's not like, wait, was that really a human? Or,
Right.
we're right off the bat, this is an AI agent. We just need 90 seconds. Just give us like a quick sense of what you're doing, what you need. Where are you? Is it a lockout? Is it a car lockout? What kind of car, so we can find you? And a locksmith will call you, in the next couple of minutes, right, to confirm everything. And then they get an automatic text, like, reassures them that everything was received. For my cleaning company, we built a automatic like price calculator, which takes a lot of the guesswork, and stress out of trying to quote people, because every house is a little bit different. The layout, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, square feet, the condition it was already in, when you got there. So a little bit of a price calculator. For people that are listening that do a lot of content, I've got a lot of content. I have a podcast as well. So we have a lot of different clips. So we built an automatic content generator. So when I wake up in the morning, I just click like 3 buttons of the type of content that I want, and it automatically extracts something that I've already built. So it's not like AI slop, like ChatGPT, write me a post. It's grabbing stuff that I've already done, and a little bit of a kind of like a marketing flywheel, like repurposes different things. So I've got 500 pieces of content, ready to go, at a click of a button due to some AI automation work that we did. So anyway, we're talking to a lot of different small business owners, calming them down a little bit. Don't worry, we've got you. We can, help you build some things. It's not nearly as daunting as you think, but sometimes you just need somebody there in the early days to kind of hold your hand a little bit, and there's no shame in that.
That's great, Brian. Thanks for sharing. And I love the name, bandsaw.ai. That's great. How big, are you able to share how big that company is at this stage? Like, where is that, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, Bandsaw, we only just 2 months ago decided to sell this to other businesses. We've already got, believe it or not, a waiting list of customers, because
Great.
there's a bigger demand than even we anticipated. But for that first 16 months, it was really like, my captive
Hmm.
AI machine. Now we're out in the wild.
That's great. So I guess let's transition into talking a little bit about what you see as, the clients that you've worked with, companies you've invested in, where you've seen them either fail or go really well. Can you kind of walk us through a little bit on what you see in leaders and what is really that successful model versus maybe what is kind of that failure mode for those that just really continue to struggle?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with 2 of my own, right? Because I think, there's a lot of humility that comes through entrepreneurship. The first company that I had, where I raised some money, moved to Argentina, the biggest mistake that I made, and, just like you, Graham, I came up through talent acquisition, but I was purely on that recruiting side. I wasn't out hunting new logos. So that world always looked kind of scary and intimidating. Like, I'm not a sales guy. That's not
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
I can negotiate pay rates and source candidates. That's what I do. So when it came time to get the sales engine going for that business, I just wanted to hire people. Like, let me just hire a bunch of high priced salespeople. They'll make the magic happen. And a huge mistake, because you can't just like buy sales as much as everybody thinks you can. It's just incredibly difficult. If you know somebody who's been able to do it, let me know, because
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. And then I also totally underestimated my the grace that prospects would give me as the founder. You know, there's nobody more passionate, nobody that knows the space better, nobody who has more domain expertise. So people just want to give you grace, even if you say the wrong thing and kind of botch it, because you're the owner of the company. Like, they know you care more than anybody. So that was a big mistake that nearly cost us the company, because we way overspent on sales that didn't produce. Um, and then I had another company that did really well, but as COVID came, we lost all of our revenue because it was project-based recruiting. But I had enough success as an entrepreneur, so you kind of get this hubris, like, I can make anything work. I can work across industries, and um, I'm not the best dressed person on anybody's list, but somehow I came up with this idea to do a men's clothing shop on Shopify during COVID, and man, did that fail hard. And no matter how much money I put into it, and I mean, I didn't really test it very well. I realized, like, the packages were coming 6 weeks late, and they had like China wrappings all over the postage. And I'm like, oh my God, this is bad. Um, and I'm trying to set the price and run Instagram ads. I'm like, what do I know about any of this stuff? But hubris gets the best of you sometimes. So ended up kind of sticking in my lane. But yeah, I've also invested in some businesses, that I might as well have just lit my money on fire. I invested in a company a couple of years ago that, I came out of like 5 years in SaaS, so I make decent investments with tech. In fact, was like moderately early in some of Elon's companies. Uh, you know, um, got into SpaceX 4 years ago, got into
Nice.
Neuralink 5 years ago. So not like an angel investor by any means,
Sure.
this background would be a lot different. But like tech, I kind of understand.
Hmm.
Um, but for some reason, I wanted to invest into a consumer packaged good company that made like women's soap. And I thought, man, this sounds great. I mean, 2 months later, that money was just vaporized. So I think what I've learned is, I think the founder's focus really matters, um, because you're really betting on them. And I think the second thing I'd say is stay in your lane, like stay with what you know. So even though I've got cleaning and locksmith and stuff, the parallels there are that these are home services businesses that were really capped by that existing operator's own capital and expertise, right? These are two things that I know: services businesses, first business, the recruiting business, plug, bandsaw, locksmith, keymasters, cleaning company, Cleanscape. All of these are services businesses. I understand the space. I understand what it needs. Acquire a customer, deliver the service, get a good review, properly invoice, organize payroll, digital payments, um, enough capital where we can do net 30 with property management companies. All these things are kind of easy to replicate, even though it's not like, I don't know the difference between, like, when we buy different keys or we buy a key machine. Like, I don't know what I'm looking at. But I know how to operate services business successfully and invest in them. So that's probably the biggest takeaway for me is pick my lane, know it well, and don't get distracted by stuff you have no idea what you're looking at.
Good stuff, Brian. Thanks for your vulnerability and just sharing kind of the good stuff and the not so good stuff and all the learnings that come along with that. Any other advice for that new startup founder or that entrepreneur looking to take it to the next level beyond the focus? I mean, focus I think is a great starting point, but anything else that comes to mind if you had to sit somebody down and just kind of walk them through like, hey, here are the top three or four things that I want you to keep in mind, like what would you tell somebody?
Yeah, the other thing, like all humility in hand, that first business that I raised money, like, wow, that seems like pretty cool. And it did at the time. And I felt, like a little bit of swag, like, yeah, I
Yeah.
raised capital, but it's not what it's cracked up to be. The pressure that you're under is absolutely enormous. I took a huge pay cut on my salary, during that business just to make sure my investor was paid, everybody else was paid. Um, uh, I felt like anxious all the time. And in retrospect, I mean, I'm glad, like, I don't have any regrets because this is what got me to where I'm at today.
Hmm.
But I would really caution people on taking investment capital, and even like SaaS companies today. You can kind of vibe code now and just get it, just a few engineers to get it to a place where it's secure, compliant, works across the enterprise. It's a lot easier to get there today. I mean, if you're running an AI company and you need a massive data center, that's a different story. But traditional SaaS, tech, services companies, you really should make the case to yourself why I need this investment and what are the strings that come with
Certainly. How about your heroes? Who do you really look up to, whether it's an entrepreneur or other leaders out there through history even?
it. Yeah, I like uh, looking at historical figures sometimes. I've never served in the military, but I'm fascinated with military leadership, military structure. General Mattis, wrote this book, and he had something about in the book called Commander's Intent, and like that really kind of resonated. Like just a one page allows for autonomy, allows for decision making. Stuff gets happen. It's not boggled down in the chain of command. Um, I really appreciate Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Things About the Hard Things. It's just, real, unfiltered, all the times he almost lost his business,
Hmm.
and I love that. And I love that, you've got a platform for people to share stories like that too, Graham, because so often it's just, the road to success was, yeah, it was easy. Everybody could do it.
Right, right.
So I think my heroes, tend to be ones that are like vulnerable, and General Mattis was very vulnerable with like some of the issues that he came up and talked about in his book too.
That's a good one. I'll have to check that out. I'm sure he's got some stories for sure.
Yeah.
Always a character to listen to for sure. Anything you've changed your mind on over the span of your life or career, Brian?
Yeah. Well, I mean, earlier I talked about founders doing sales. That is something that I'm steadfast on. Like, I would never invest in a founder who's afraid to sell. Or 15 years ago, maybe, hey, like, they've got their zone of genius. Nope. Your zone of genius has to include sales, even if you got to learn how to do it. In fact, I advised a startup about a year ago on this exact thing. It was a product design CEO, and I was urging him, like, hey, I know you want to hire the sales guy. I know you do. Don't do it. You've got to be the face. You've got to be the sales guy. I think that's a real big thing. And then maybe on the marketing front, I started to believe more in the phrase consumption drives conversion. Um, let your prospects learn about you over time. When they're comfortable, they're ready to do it. But if you try to force it and you just look at things like, I've got 1,000 companies in this stage and 212 in this stage, it's not a math problem anymore. It's a consumption problem.
I like the way you're looking at that. That's good. So you've done a lot of cool stuff. You've had different businesses, you know, wins and failures and all that. Like what inspires you about this whole journey?
Yeah, I've always been a mile wide, inch deep kind of guy. When I was in San Francisco, I got pretty good as a head of talent. You know, we even won an award as like the best recruiting department, companies under 1,000 globally.
Nice.
And I was really proud of that. But I think that kind of put me at this crossroads of, do I want to like keep running that playbook and just get better and better and better at that one area? Or do I want to go broad? And I was always the broad guy. Like, I want to learn about term sheets and how they're structured and finance and building financial models and learning marketing and positioning. And that led me to an MBA, and it led me to investing and failures and, you know, all sorts of stuff. But um, I really like learning just enough about something and then moving to the next thing, you know. That's I think that probably inspires me. And then what motivates me is, you know, providing for my family, my kids.
Nice. What have we missed that we should talk about, Brian?
Um, Something that I did that I think really shaped me too. Uh, so as well traveled as I am, uh, you know, I didn't grow up with like that kind of privilege. I love my childhood, but you know, like uh, was on an airplane, I think like once until, or maybe twice until I went to college. Family summers were like 3 days camping in Wisconsin, you know, and I mean, gosh, like my kids have been to Japan and everywhere, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
um, but uh, I didn't even have a passport until I was 28 years old, you know, crazy. Um, but you know, by the time I was 35, you know, my wife and I spent a whole year just living out of a suitcase, traveling the world. You know, we went all over Asia, all over Latin America, um, and um, you know, and then I'm also big into foster care. My wife and I adopted our little daughter out of foster care. So I think like all this is just giving me like broad exposure, not just to business stuff, but to life. You know, like being in Cambodia and India and Vietnam, and I don't love every country that I've been to, but I think exposure is awesome, and I would really encourage people to get as much exposure as possible.
Very cool. That's it's a great outlook and way of looking at things that I think people can take a lot of a lot away from for sure. And you know, sometimes we need to kind of step out of our own little box and learn a little bit more, stretch ourselves a little bit. And appreciate you bringing that energy today. Before we wrap up, what do you want those you have worked with to say about you and your impact?
Uh, wow, that's a good good question. You know, I think I know the answer to that because I didn't like the way I was treated, you know, at maybe a couple companies in the past, and I always have tried to remember that, like the way that I explain things to the team, even if things aren't going well. And I don't want to use the word empathy because I think that's overused, but there's just like a certain way of thinking about the other person and how that message is landing. So I hope that people are people appreciate that about me. You know, that think about them when I'm delivering the message.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your podcast before we wrap up, and any other ways that people should follow you and your mission?
I appreciate that. The Nearshore Cafe podcast, we talk about Latin America, doing business in Latin America, the stories and the people. Half our guests are people in the States that, have looked at Latin America as a place to build their companies, software teams, marketing, VAs, call centers, and their journeys, like trying to figure it out. And the other half are really cool people in Latin America. They've got everything we've got: venture capitalists, investors, operators, engineers, business analysts, QA people, marketers. And we get a little taste of their country too, what they should know about Guatemala, what they should know about Nicaragua, what they should know about Florianopolis in Brazil. And that's really where we hit on that podcast. And then to follow me, probably the best way is either on LinkedIn or go to plugg.tech. And there's a contact us form, and it gets into ways to connect with me and the team.
Brian Samson, thank you for being on Flywheel Leadership. We appreciate you sharing.
My pleasure. Had a great time.
Take care. Thanks.